Okay, everybody. Today's gonna be an in-depth conversation with somebody who knows. He was been on this channel before, and I had the opportunity to watch him, and he's given so much insight to so many of the cases that we're all following. Please welcome the lead attorney. What's up, brother?
I am doing well. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the last conversation when I was on here with Blad. You know, his platform is just amazing. So many awesome guests that he has. So I love coming here and talking to you guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know, in the Vlad interview, he covered your background, but just to bring our viewers up to speed, just give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I am from Atlanta, Georgia, where we're at right now. Went to the University of Georgia for undergrad. Also went to the University of Georgia for law. So shout out to the Dogs. You know, we are your national champions. If you know anything about college football, we are number one. So after I graduated from law school, I worked here in Atlanta for about 20 years, retired a couple of years ago, and I got on YouTube. And so now I'm just making these videos talking about legal aspects, kind of ramping down from all the high energy stuff I was doing in my previous career. So now I'm just relaxing.
Beautiful, beautiful. What type of law did you practice?
It was primarily family law. When I started out, it was kind of door law, which is anything that comes through the door. But as I got more into my career, I saw that I was pretty good doing family law cases. So divorce, custody modifications, alimony, that type stuff.
Okay, beautiful. With that being said, it's so much going on, especially within the hip hop landscape. So many cases with so many major artists, and maybe you can shed some light on this from a legal perspective. We know what we read, we know what we hear in the streets, but to get someone who has an understanding of the law, and just with so many of people who we listen to their music for so many years are going through and what they're facing. I'm looking forward to just hearing your in-depth perspective from a legal standpoint. Let's start with Boosie, great friend to this channel.
Yeah, Boosie's awesome. He just got arrested, unfortunately, for a looks like a weapons possession charge. It's pretty unfortunate how it all went down. We see so much of social media being a factor in some of these cases. And it looks like it was the same way with our man Boosie. He was apparently on Instagram Live, and some police officer in the San Diego Police Department happened to be watching his live and noticed an object in his waistband that looked like a gun. And so they started actually tracking Boosie with a helicopter, trying to locate him and find him, which is, you could say it's a little bit of overkill. You have a man, possibly he has a violation for a gun charge, but then you're going to try to track him with a helicopter. It doesn't make too much sense. At any rate, that's what they did. They found him, pulled him over. He was in a car with his security, and they searched the car, found a loaded 9mm Hellcat and also a loaded 9mm Glock. Now, it's the Glock that's the issue, because the Glock appeared to be sitting on the seat between Boosie and his security in the back of the car. And also, that's the gun that they're saying matches with the gun that was in his waistband when they saw him on IG Live. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens. They tried to indict the case. They took it to court. They had the first hearing. At the hearing, they ended up dismissing the charge. And so Boosie walked out, and he thought he was a free man. And then the feds came in and arrested him. And now he has a federal charge for the weapon, for the weapons possession.
Okay, there's so much to unpack here. Can you explain? Is it typical or normal for? I understand that the law, the feds, police, they are now watching closely the social feed of many of these hip hop artists. I get it, but is it normal practice to get a helicopter and cops on the ground for someone who may or may not have a gun on their person? I mean, Boosie could have just as easily been like, I had anything in my back pocket, or even to the case of Ja Morant. You know, he was like, that gun was really a lighter.
Right.
Boosie could have been like, I had a lighter that, was made to look like a gun. But I mean, it sounds like a whole hell of a lot to get ground troops and helicopters out there for something that you saw on Instagram. And it's not even like he held it to somebody's head. Nobody was in danger. It was just in his waistband.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The allocation of resources just to arrest Boosie was, I mean, it was tremendous. They really wanted him. Now, we need to be honest and recognize that Boosie has a long history with law enforcement, right? He's been in and out of jail. He served prison time. He beat a murder charge back in the day. So Boosie is well known to the legal system. And when you combine that with his fame, with his money, with his recognition, it's a big prize to be able to take him down if an officer can say, I was the one that contributed to the arrest of this man, to the incarceration of this man. It's sad because, everybody loves Boosie. Everybody recognizes the talent that he has. And everybody wishes the best for him. No one really wants him to be going through these things. And so for the police officers to target him like they did, when there are so many other things that are going on, it doesn't make a ton of sense. Not from a judicial sense in the terms of how court resources are used, how law enforcement resources are used. It really does seem like they targeted this man. And, that's not the type of system that we want. Now, if he's violating the law, we need to say that, no one is above the law and everybody needs to follow the rules. But it absolutely does seem like they really went over and above to really target him and to arrest him. And with the state dropping the charge and then the feds picking it up, it's a serious case, especially when you consider his criminal history. So, hopefully he gets out of it scot-free, but it's going to be tough when you go up against the feds. It's interesting. I saw a video of him, I think on Vlad, where he was talking about his son, and his son had gotten arrested and it was calling Boosie to get him out. And it was, over the weekend. And
you know how I'm thinking, and it's South by Southwest. You know how many people in jail?
Yeah. It might take a while. Yeah.
I'm like, this South by Southwest weekend, so I got him out.
Obviously Boosie loves his son, wants the best for his son. And he said that he cussed him out, right, for getting locked up, and which is what you would want, I guess, any father to do, to try to instill some discipline. And at the same time, you turn around and, now he himself is locked up. So you really don't know what it is. We see a lot of this in our community in terms of generational curses, fathers going to prison, uncles going to prison, then the sons and the brothers go to jail, they follow them. and you hope that there's a way to break that. But, when you have people in this type of environment, it's very difficult. It's not like Boosie was arrested for murder or for aggravated assault. He was arrested for having a gun on his person. Now, he wasn't supposed to have it as a convicted felon, but there was no evidence that he was pointing it at somebody, that he was waving it around, that he was using it in any type of way that could have endangered anybody. And when you are living the type of lifestyle that Boosie's always lived, you do need protection. And so it's one of these things where, he could say, of course, this isn't a legal defense, but just morally, with the money that I have, with the recognition that I have, with the history that I have, I need to have a way to protect myself. It's not like I can just run around in these streets unarmed when everybody has a gun. You see the things that happen to Nipsey. You see the things that happen to XXXTentacion. You see all of the violence. And so if you don't have a gun, I mean, you are absolutely a victim, a waiting victim, just waiting for something bad to happen to you. So he's kind of stuck because he's not allowed to have a weapon, but at the same time, because of his lifestyle, because of his history, because of his environment, you could make the argument that he absolutely needs it. But because of this need, because of this necessity, now he's looking at, possibly Fed time. So, it's just a tough situation all around.
Yeah, it really is. And again, I'm outside looking in like so many of us. And it seems beyond unfair. Like you said, it wasn't like this weapon was used to harm anybody. It wasn't like this weapon was being waved around. It wasn't used in a robbery attempt, or no one was shot with it. I gotta wonder, is there an argument in there from his legal counsel to say, look, this man was being targeted. He's being discriminated against. This is absolutely a prime example of profiling at its best. Is that a legal argument that they could, number one, use and number two, win with?
Well, they can try to use it. In terms of it being a legal argument, it's not very persuasive. It's certainly persuasive in the court of public opinion, but when you go into federal court, these judges really are not trying to hear that. Having said that, I mean, you're exactly right. And these are some of the arguments that his attorney is making. The fact that he was targeted for this. Now we're going to see how it plays out. Apparently, there was some body cam footage with Bootsy making some statements that appear not to be in his favor in terms of what he was telling his security about the gun. And so that's going to be possibly used against him. We just hope that he comes out of this okay, but it's going to be tough when the feds pick it up. So we'll see how it goes. His attorney is certainly fighting for him. A lot of people don't mention this, but when you are arrested and charged with a serious crime, one of the things that you have to do is hire an attorney. And if you're in Boosie's position with the money, these attorneys are going to know who you are before you walk in the door. And they are going to up their prices and charge you an arm and a leg, especially if the attorney that you have is a good attorney. I think right after Boosie was arrested, the news hit that he was selling his whatever car he had. I don't know if it was a Bentley or something like that, presumably to try to raise money. So that's another cost to being arrested and charged with a crime. Even if he beats the case, and hopefully he does, it's not like he's going to get a refund, so the government can target you, make you spend all of this money, make you sell your possessions, stress you out, stress your family out. And then if they lose their case, they just say, oh, well, no harm, no foul, and send you on your way. And now you've got, all these expenses that you've had to pay for. So, you just really hope that he makes it out. But to be honest, making it out of this situation is really only half the battle, because what you don't want is for him to make it out of this situation and a year and a half later, he's back in court on, something else. I saw a video of him where he was pulled over, and I'm not sure if it was body cam footage or if it was footage from the patrol car, but he was out on the side of the highway in handcuffs. And he was, making all these statements about how he's going to show, these cops what he's made of. He was saying that he's going to make these cops whip him, that he's going to show these cops that he's gangster. All right. And it's that type of mentality that doesn't allow a lot of our people to escape this environment that they're in. I would never want my father or my brother or my son to have an interaction with police officers and have him screaming that he's going to make the cops whip him, that he's going to show these cops that he's a gangster, right? It's not healthy. It's not helpful. It's only going to lead to negative interactions. And then when you see Boosie, when you see him in these interviews, when you see him with other people, such a loving man, such a caring man, you would hope that streak in him about, fighting law enforcement, fighting the cops, you would hope that somehow that could be eliminated along with this particular case, because no matter how this particular case goes, if we still have this same type of mentality, we're always going to be in this situation in the future. I can tell you that from representing numerous people over 20 years. Not only have I had clients that come in repeatedly over the years for the same types of violations, but a lot of times you'll see family members, just whole families, say, oh, well, those are the Satterfields, all those boys are bad, or those are the Smiths, he's a Smith boy. And, so not only can it be instilled in one particular person, but it's almost like sometimes whole families have this whole curse. And, hopefully Boosie can get out of it. His son, who was arrested, can get out of it. I don't want to sound like one of these old head rights and, straighten up and fly right. We want to be reasonable, but we can't really continue this way and expect to get good outcomes.
No, you're absolutely right. Everything you're saying is correct. And again, I don't want to take him off the hook for the remarks that he's made, because obviously the cops, the prosecutor, the judges, they're human beings. They see this. And I gotta believe the next time he appears in the court, even if they say, oh, we have to do our job and we're not penalizing you for anything that you said on social media, they're human beings, and it might not go great for him, or maybe the hammer will be swung a little harder. But I gotta believe, sitting in his shoes, you're feeling like every freaking 5 minutes I'm being pulled over. Every 5 minutes, this is a clear case of targeting and profiling. I'm pissed, and my only real retribution is to stand on what I believe and continue to speak out against what I believe is unfair targeting of me. So I hope, and I pray that he doesn't, continue to go on social media, if for nothing else, giving his thoughts in the moment. And this has a favorable outcome, but I can see where he would be pissed, because anybody who would be continuously, and especially us as African-American men, we know what it is to walk down the street and you know, when the stop and frisk laws were in effect. It's every 5 seconds or, you know, being pulled over, you match the description or this car matches the description of a crime that took place on the other side of town. It's like, well, what the hell does that have to do with me? You are frustrated. You really, really are. And even more so, it's like, damn, the state dismissed this. I walk out the court and the feds are waiting for me out here. Like I'm pissed. I get $50,000 bail, and then y'all running still say, nope, you know, you need to be held. We know you were granted bail, but we're going to hold you for a few extra days. I don't know. It's just, you know, everything you said, I agree, but I can see the other side as well.
Yeah, it's tough, and I agree 100% with what you're saying too. It's absolutely profiling. It's kind of a generalized profiling, and it's specific at the same time. It's generalized, like you were saying, just being a black man in this country. Lord knows, we've been profiled forever. But that can apply to any black man or black woman, to be honest, or brown man, brown woman. That's in general. That might cover the general population, no matter whether you're rich or poor. But then you have this specific profiling to him. You know, a lot of people who live in small towns will tell you the profiling there is, oh, well, you know, that's Trayvon. I recognize his car. You know, they don't even see him. They just see the car. I know Trayvon, you know, he's usually up to something. I know Trayvon, you know, has a Fourth Amendment waiver. Let's go pull him over and see what he's got going on. So not just pulling him over because he's a black man, but pulling him over specifically because who he is. You look at Boosie, having served time in prison. You know, they locked him up down here in Georgia, found, what did they find? They found marijuana on him, found a gun on him, found $20,000 in cash. You know, certain people are just they're going to be movers and shakers. They're going to have stuff on them. And if you watch them long enough, you'll probably get them. But that whole watching them long enough, that is the profiling, right? But if you follow Boosie, you know, can Boosie go 2 years without having a gun on his person? You know, I've never met Boosie before. So, you know, maybe he can. But if you look at his history, you look at what he's arrested for now, you look at the type of lifestyle he lives in the environment in which he lives, that's going to be a tough thing to ask that man to go 2 years without a gun. Now, he's not supposed to have a gun forever, you know, not 2 years, not 20 years, for the rest of his life. Is that going to happen? Probably not. The cops know that. So all they got to do is watch him long enough, and they feel like they'll catch him. And it looks like that's what they've done here. You know, having helicopters follow his car. I mean, they know they got him from the beginning. So it's an easy score. You know, these cops, they like making arrests. These prosecutors, they like convictions. And if they ever look at, hey, you know, we're in the second week of the month, you know, we need an arrest. We need a big profile person to fall. Let's check out what Boosie's got going on. Well, he's got a gun. Big surprise. Let's go pick him up. And they got him.
Yeah. I pray everything works out in that case. Okay, let's move this thing on. Another huge case that's going on in this community. YNW Melly. Double homicide case.
Yes.
Cameras in the courtroom. Are you following that case closely?
Yeah, that case is amazing. You know, they're on break for this week, so they really haven't done anything. In the beginning of the case, it was looking good for Melly. You know, he has an outstanding legal team, particularly this black man. His name escapes me, unfortunately. I need to put some respect on his name because he is doing an excellent job representing Melly. And he was scoring a lot of wins against the prosecution in the beginning. But this case is going to take weeks. And as the days have gone on, you see the prosecutor's case building. And it was looking very good for Melly in the beginning, but now the tables are starting to turn. The forensics evidence is coming in fast, and it all points to some foul play. They've got video footage of Melly getting in the car, and the forensics is saying, yeah, these shots came from the back of the car where Melly appeared to be sitting. And this evidence is not like he said, she said evidence. This evidence is scientific, and no one can really argue with it. They were talking about the bullet holes that were in the car. You'll remember that it was Melly's and Bortland's idea that the car was attacked from the right side via a drive-by. And that's how the two gentlemen, Juvie and Sachs, were killed. Sachs. But if you look at the bullet holes, they will tell you that that's not how it happened, because the bullet holes are in such a shape to where the bullets entered cleanly, just a straight spiral, which indicates that the gun was not moving. There was only one bullet hole that had like a key-shaped form, which lets you know that the gun was moving, and that moving of the gun imparted movement on the round, and the round started to tumble. And when it was tumbling, it hit the car, and you see that tumbling motion formed on the panel of the car. All of the other bullets, they do not have that shape. They enter in cleanly, which means, according to the forensics, that the gun was not moving. The gun was stationary. Well, a gun is going to be stationary if you're just standing outside the car shooting at the car. A gun is not going to be stationary in some drive-by where both cars are moving, as Bortland was kind of saying. They have evidence to show, the blood splatter, how the shots that killed the two gentlemen occurred within the car because of how the blood was released from the bodies. There was blood on the ceilings from the front passenger's, from his cranium. The only way, according to the forensics experts, that the blood could have been on the ceiling would have been for the bullet to come from the backside of his head. It would not have come from shots that were coming from right to left. They have examined the bodies through autopsies. They've shown the bullets that killed these two gentlemen versus the bullet wounds, the bullet holes that didn't. Those bodies have bullets within them that were clearly imparted once the bodies were already deceased, right? These are things that little Melly, when he was 18 or 19, allegedly committing these crimes, he's not necessarily going to know that, when you shoot a person and they're alive, they're going to bleed. But if you shoot the same person and they're dead, they're not going to bleed. So if you're shooting a dead body, it's going to show that the body was already dead. They have evidence of the car door, Melly's car door, being opened when one of the shots came from right to left, which means that Melly had gotten out of the car, and the angle of the bullet that hit the door proved that the door was open. So Melly got out of the car and left the car door open, and then walked around, according to the forensics, and shot up the car. I guess he should have closed the car, but again, he's not going to know that. He's not going to think about that type of thing if he's trying to tell the story that these people died in a drive-by. Bullets show that Melly should have been hit himself, right? Melly should have had wounds himself. He was fine. He was fine, and Bortland, the driver, were fine. So the forensics is not adding up. The phone, which shows, all of the GPS tracking, it's got some very damaging evidence in there. It shows that it was his phone. The witnesses are not coming through, It's kind of funny. They interviewed Melly's girlfriend's mother. And I see this all the time with people when I would cross-examine them. They want to avoid answering certain questions. Well, Melly's girlfriend's mom, she didn't want to answer any question. And she was just always, I can't remember. Did you talk to so-and-so on this date? I can't remember. What is your telephone number? I can't remember. What's your daughter's telephone number? I can't remember, right? That does not come along. That doesn't really rest well with the jury. They asked her, did she receive any money from Melly's manager? And she said, no, I never received any money. What was the problem? The prosecutor had her text messages and had other documentary evidence that showed that she had received money from the manager. And when she really pressed the mom about that, the mom had to admit, well, he didn't give me any money for personal reasons, right? But that wasn't the question. The question was, did the manager give you any money? And she says, no. I asked her again, did the manager give you money? No. Then the prosecutor is able to show that she received like $5,000. And then the prosecutor asked her one more time, did you receive any money? Oh, well, I didn't receive any money for personal use. Okay, well, what did you receive the money for? Well, there was this trip and this Airbnb stuff, and it's not coming off credible. And it's very interesting. This whole case is very interesting, really, from a legal perspective as well, because you really understand that it's so hard to get justice with the system that we have. Because these jurors, they're not shown the whole story. Like, no one knows, let's just start off by saying no one knows the whole story besides Melly and Bortland, because they were there, right? So the jury is supposed to make a determination of whether to put these men to death, but they weren't there at the scene. Fine. So someone needs to explain to them what happened, all right? Melly's not going to testify. Lord, I hope they don't put him on the stand and testify. Bortland might, but he hasn't testified yet. So the jury is left with other evidence. Now, Melly has talked to his attorneys about what happened and has given his attorneys some information. Also, the state has their idea about what happened. But the jury doesn't even get all of that information either. The jury wasn't on the scene. So if this is all the information about the case, the juries don't get all the information because they weren't there. And now the attorneys know information, the judges know information, but the juries don't get that information either, not all of it, because the judge excludes certain evidence. For example, the mother has Instagram messages. Melly's girlfriend's mother has Instagram messages saying that Melly's manager and people from his company had promised them all of this money if the mother does not cooperate with the state. If she just disappears and doesn't cooperate, they're going to get all of this money. Melly's girlfriend's mother was a nurse, and apparently she was making a lot of money. She was making, like, according to her, $9,000 a week. She ended up quitting that job based on the promises of the manager and the company, right? That she shouldn't cooperate in any of this investigation. Well, what happened? They made her all these promises. She quit her job, and then they didn't come through on the promises. They didn't pay her all of the money that she was expected to make. So she sends a message on Instagram saying, hey, this is BS. They promised me this. They promised me that. I haven't gotten any money. I quit my job, but I look at them. They're on cruises. They're traveling. They're on vacation. She says, they're about to call me Miss Snitch Bitch, right? I'm about to go to the prosecutor and I'm about to air them all out. I'm about to tell everything. This is a text message that was played in court, but guess what? The jury wasn't there. The judge didn't allow the jury to see the text message, right? So the judge is further limiting the information that these jurors can use to figure out what's going on in the case. Maybe these jurors would like to know that this woman is saying that she's been promised and paid this money. Maybe these jurors should know that this woman says that she's going to cooperate with the state and just and air out Melly and air out Melly's company and air out Melly's manager, but they never heard a word of it. So you see from the information that Melly has all the way down to the information of what these jurors are presented, it's very little. It's very little. And yet, from this limited information, these jurors are supposed to decide whether to put Melly to death. And it's interesting to think that we have a system like that, where we are counting on people, regular people. It's not like all 12 of those people went to Harvard or anything like that. We don't issue IQ tests. We don't know if some of these jurors are mentally incapacitated. Lord knows it looks like Melly's got some mental issues. If you've seen him and his antics in court, he'll be over there praying and kissing and blowing, and he's sitting there in trial, like in the middle of trial. So Lord knows he's got something going on. What's going on in the minds of these jurors? Are they all regular people? Are they all normal functioning people? Maybe not. But they are the ones who are expected to issue these life or death situations with very limited information. So it's interesting how this case is turning out. But, I will say that it's starting to look very bad for Melly. I don't think he's going to testify because I don't think he's all there mentally, to be honest. He's not going to present well testifying in this case, and they're going to cross-examine him to hell. And so if he can't represent himself, and the state's case is looking stronger and stronger by the day. I mean, they just convinced the judge to allow a viewing. What is a viewing? The jurors get to go down and they get to see the damn vehicle. Well, what's wrong with that? Apart from the bullet holes, it's all the blood, the DNA, the bacteria that eats that eats the blood is all up in there. So because 5-year-old blood, right? So this blood has gone through some chemical changes. There was brain matter in the car. Once it's one thing to hear about this car, but to actually stand 5 feet away and look at the bullet wounds, the bullet holes in the side of the vehicle, look at all the dried blood or the bacteria that's there. That's real. That's real. And so I don't know what Melly's defense is going to be. Now, he was doing a very good job. His defense was doing a very good job in the beginning of kind of parrying all of these shots. But as the days have gone on, starting to look worse and worse. We're going to keep an open mind. Melly's defense hasn't had a chance to really put on their case yet. That might happen in a week or 2 or 3, who knows? But I will say it's starting to look bad for the brother.
Okay, whoa. I got several questions I want to ask you. Number one, were there ever any other suspects to your knowledge in this case? Or did the authorities immediately zone in on Melly and his co-defendant?
Yeah, it was pretty much Melly in the beginning and his co-defendant, because when Bortland dropped off the bodies at the hospital, things weren't adding up from the very beginning. That's the issue. And then when forensics came in, I mean, it was obvious that a lot of the shots occurred within the car. They found a shell casing in the car. How is a shell casing supposed to be in this car when you're alleging that the bodies were shot through a drive-by? If I'm getting hit in my car from a drive-by, it's not like a shell casing is going to come from that car to my car. So in the very beginning, things didn't make sense. And then with Bortland's testimony or interview that he gave, and, there was clearly some falsehoods there. Cops are like, we don't really need to look much further than these two. Now, the defendant Melly, he's saying kind of in opening statements and kind of what his defense team is alluding to, it could be a lot of people. It wasn't our guy. It could have been, these drive-by people. Could have been Bortland, right? Could have been a lot of people, but it just wasn't us. But in terms of the law enforcement, they were pretty sure that it was kind of one of the two.
Okay. That being said, I know that we are still in the part of the case where it's the prosecution, the state, is presenting their side. So it's no it's no accident that this looks very bad for Melly. The defense is going to have a chance to present their side. And I'm sure they're going to bring forensic experts on board to contradict all of the findings of the state's forensic experts. Has it been shown to your knowledge if there is one or multiple shooters in this case?
Well, it seems like the forensics is thinking their story is there were two shootings. There was a shooting inside the car coming from the rear passenger seat where Melly was sitting. And then there was another shooting into the car from the right-hand side. All right, so those are the two shootings involved in this incident. The shootings from the outside in, they did hit the bodies, but it's been shown that the bodies were already dead, right? So if the bodies are already dead, let's not worry about that second shooting. What about the first shooting? Well, the first shooting, according to all the evidence, is that it occurred in the car. One of the bodies has stippling on the face, right? And stippling is what you get. It's basically just gunpowder that burns the skin. And the gunpowder burns the skin because the projectile was fired, the gun was fired so close to the skin. How are you going to have that proximity between the skin and the weapon in a drive-by? You'll never get it. There was there was gunpowder residue in the car that they found, and the gunpowder residue appeared to be coming from the back, the rear passenger seat, which again contradicts the story about the drive-by. I mean, the forensics is like, yeah, there were two shootings, but there was really the first shooting that killed the two brothers.
Okay, and I want to be specific with my question. I understand there were two shootings, but it could make a difference in this case because obviously it's a life and death case.
Yeah.
Literally. Could they show if it was multiple shooters?
Oh, multiple shooters.
Yes.
The forensics, they don't think so. From the angles of the bullets, from the trajectory of the rounds, from the stippling, it looks like it all came from the same gun. That's the problem with forensics. You really can't argue it. The only thing that you can do, and it's like you said, is bring in your own expert to interpret the facts, interpret the data, and then you'll just have a battle of two forensic experts, right? And the jury will just have to listen to both and kind of decide who is right, because we regular people are not competent to decide on the science and, you know, the trajectories and all that. I think the last forensic expert that was on the stand, he was talking about how he uses the Pythagorean theorem daily to figure out some of these angles. You know, none of us regular people use this theory. So we just have to sit back and listen to what they say and try to decide who is right. So hopefully, like you say, Melly brings in his own forensic experts and they can contradict some of the state's testimony. But it looks from what we have right now that there was not multiple shooters. There was just one shooter coming from one direction. The expert said it looked like the gun, if I'm sitting in the back seat, you know, there was a shot here, which is kind of weird the way he pointed the gun, because it was kind of like 90 degrees. It was, you know, bang to the side of the head, and then, you know, bang bang to the brother in the front. It doesn't look like Bortland had a weapon that was firing similarly, you know, to the side, or certainly not to the back seat. So all of the bullets came from a singular point in the rear driver's side, according to the forensic what we have now. And like you said in this, you're exactly right. We haven't seen what Melly's defense is. We don't know what their experts are going to say. The prosecutor's case should look very strong. It should look extremely strong, like you were saying, because we haven't heard the other side. You know, if I get into a fight with somebody and I'm allowed to tell my side and they're not allowed to tell their side yet, my side's going to seem pretty persuasive. It's only until you hear their side and then compare the two where you're like, okay, well, let's think about this. So you're exactly right in saying that the state's case should look strong. It didn't look strong in the beginning. The Melly's team was doing a really good job of pushing back on the state's points, but you know, day after day, as their case has been accumulating, as their case has been building, it's starting to look very, very bad. But we'll have to kind of reserve our judgment and see what happens when Melly gets his chance to put on some evidence. And again, he's not really trying to put on evidence so much to show that he's innocent, versus he's trying to put on evidence to create, you know, reasonable doubt. Because he doesn't have to show that he's innocent. He just has to show that the case that the state has is not strong enough to carry the reasonable doubt burden.
Correct. Last question before we move this thing on. The victims allegedly were his friends. They all knew each other. These were not random associates. They were actual friends. And if I'm a juror and I'm just thinking from the standpoint of sitting in that jury box, I get the forensic, and I'm gonna weigh that heavy. But I'm also a human being, and I'm being tasked with deciding the fate of a man who says, I didn't do it. There were no witnesses there. You know, I'm telling you my version of a story, and I'm hoping that this entire thing is terrible. 2 people lost their lives. Let's not take the lives of 2 other people who could possibly be innocent. Has the state, in your opinion, put out a motive that would show the jurors that these people would pick up a gun knowingly and end the lives of 2 people that they call friends?
Yeah, they haven't really gotten into that yet. And you're exactly right. The jury is going to want to know, you know, why are there 2 bodies in this car? Why are there 2 dead people? Like, what's the reason? People typically don't kill other people without a reason. Now, you know, it's come out that, not in this trial necessarily, but Melly's girlfriend was receiving nudes from Sachs, one of the people that was killed. And you may say, well, okay, if I got a girlfriend and she's receiving nudes from my homeboy, that's a betrayal. But that's not a betrayal sufficient enough for me to murder this guy. That would be fair to say. But we need to understand, number one, that, when this occurred, Melly still is young. And when it occurred, he was even younger. But if we're going to be honest, Melly is not all right in the head. I haven't seen any paperwork, but he's he stated on interviews prior to this arrest that, he was bipolar or, schizophrenic. He's talked about how there's a Melvin and, Melvin is super nice. Melvin is caring. Melly is nice. Melly is caring. Melly is sweet. But then he also has a Melvin inside of him. And he was saying, well, Melvin protects Melly, and I only let Melvin out at night. When people start saying that they only let their personalities out at night, that's when you know, right? So what motive do you need for someone who is not all of there mentally, I suppose? You probably need lesser of a reason than a normal person. Now, they haven't gotten into any of that, but it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Agreed. And unfortunate for Melly and his co-defendant, recently in the state of Florida, Governor DeSantis passed into law where once upon a time, in order to put somebody to death, it had to be a unanimous vote. Now it's 8-4. You just need 8 jurors to say, yep, this person deserves to die. Should he and his co-defendant be found guilty in the first place when they go into the punitive stage. So the bar to put them to death has been lowered. So hopefully everything works out in their favor.
Agreed.
I pray everything works out for the best. And earlier I said, I pray everything works out in his favor, but that's the wrong choice of words, because 2 people lost their lives. And those families are hurting. Those families deserve justice. So if this man is guilty of taking 2 innocent lives, he deserves everything he has coming to him. He does. He really, really does. And I pray that the families get healing. But if he is not guilty, I pray everything works out in his favor. Because it would be very, very sad to have 2 additional lives lost, because the state put on a better case than the defense. So, with that being said, let's talk about a case that you know very well, going on right in your backyard, the YSL RICO case. I know last time you sat down with Vlad, you spoke about this case in depth. At that time, the juror pool hadn't been picked yet. Has anything changed there? There were several of the defendants that they didn't have lawyers. Has anything changed there? Is there anything that's changed since the last time you sat in the seat?
That's a great question. Not too much has changed. There still is no jury selected, and that will take more months. It's kind of undefined how long this process is going to take just to select the jury. It's anticipated that there are going to be some 300 witnesses in this case. It's a RICO case, a humongous case. It's basically sucking up all of the court resources that we have down here. So this case is going to take, once they select a jury, it could easily take 6 months, 9 months, and it's going to take more months for the jury to be selected. So not much has gone on regarding that. This Young Thug's attorney has put in a motion to dismiss, and it looks like an interesting argument. He's asking for 61 of the counts in the indictment to be dismissed, saying that they didn't occur basically within the statute of limitations. For a RICO case, you need a conspiracy, but you also need an act in furtherance of that conspiracy. And these acts, according to Young Thug's attorney, need to occur within 5 years of the indictment. And for 61 of these counts, the act occurred outside of the statute of limitations, outside of the 5 years. So he's asking for 61 of these counts basically to be dismissed, not only against Young Thug, but against all of the defendants. And we're going to see what the judge says. It's probably not going to work, but it's a creative argument saying anything that happened before, I think it was before May of 2017, they need to be dismissed. So we're still waiting on that. Young Thug's brother was basically sentenced to 9 years on Fook. He had been caught up in this RICO case along with Young Thug and others. He actually pled guilty to 1 count of RICO violations and then 1 count of receiving stolen property. But he got what you could consider a sweetheart deal in the sense that he got 12 years. 2 of those years, he got credit for time served, and then the other 10 were on probation. Well, what happened? He got caught with a loaded gun, right, as a convicted felon. So he got brought back into court, and the judge took all of his time. Revoked, it was like 9 years and 6 months. Revoked it all, which on the face of it looks pretty harsh, right? He could have revoked 2 years, 3 years. He took all 9 just like that. But he stated, during the hearing, that I told you over and over, can't have guns. You can't have guns. When we showed up for the plea, I told you can't have guns. When we showed up for this hearing, I told you can't have guns. When you went on probation, you signed this document saying that you understood you can't have guns. You signed that document stating that you know that you can't have guns. Not even 6 months after your plea, what do you get caught with? A gun. And so the judge really laid the hammer down. A lot of people thought that was overly stern, and it does look stern. I do want to say, though, I don't know this judge on a personal level, but we are both down here in Atlanta. And even though his actions were harsh against Unfook, I've seen him be very caring. One of the cases that I had right when I retired was before this judge. It was an adoption case, which judges love because usually judges are dealing with murders, they're dealing with aggravated assaults, they're dealing with divorces, families being torn apart. But in adoptions, you have a child that's in an unfortunate situation, and you have an adult or a couple, stepping up to help this child. So judges love these adoptions, and they're closed proceedings. So usually judges kick everybody out. But, in my case, Glanville, the judge, invited us back to his chambers, his office. And he was so sweet with my clients, gave the child some stickers. And you see in his office, all of his awards. You see his flag, he's Army, been in the service. I think he's in the reserve now, but, his military background spans 35 years. He, like me, was a double dog. He went to the University of Georgia for undergrad, went to the University of Georgia for law school. We had some of the same professors. He was there before I was. He's a little bit older. But, he's a serious man. After he graduated, he worked for a time at a firm called Arrington and Hollowell. Now, I interned at that same firm. The name had changed. It was Hollowell, Foster, and Gep. But Hollowell is pretty important. You might not know who Donald Hollowell is, but everyone should. He was Dr. Martin Luther King's attorney. Atlanta down here is very small, and it was much smaller back in the day. And he got Martin Luther King out of jail numerous times, got him out of prison. In fact, Donald Hollowell is one of the reasons why I'm sitting here, one of the reasons why Judge Glanville is on the bench for the Melly for the Young Thug trial, because Hollowell sued our school to integrate it back in the day and allow Black students into the university and the law school. So it's a little Black history there for you, but this judge worked at that firm, Arrington and Hollowell. The point is that this judge is a very serious man. He's a really great man, in my opinion. Now, you've seen him make some controversial rulings because this case has been a goddamn circus, to be honest. He's found attorneys in contempt. He's had attorneys write, papers. He's had attorneys pay for other attorneys' lunches, but it's just because it's such a big case. This case never should have been brought the way it was brought. It's the biggest case that the state of Georgia has ever had. I don't know if there'll ever be a case like this in the future because of the disaster that it's turned out to be. So he's trying to do the best that he can. And here in this very serious case, you have Unfook, who was basically let out of jail kind of on the same deal that Gunner had. And within 6 months, he's violating his probation again. And Glanville just snapped on him and took all of his time. So now he's going back, for going back to prison for 9 years and 6 months. And again, it's the same thing that we talked about with Boosie. Why is it that we get arrested, we go to prison, we get out, and we're still with these guns? Why is it that we're signing all of this documentation? We're having all of these judges tell us that we're not allowed to have guns. And then the first thing we do is go get a gun. Now, maybe that speaks to our environment. Maybe that speaks to we need to protect ourselves. Lord knows down here in Atlanta, it's a violent place. You can get killed at the mall. So there is an argument to be made that you need to have a weapon, but at the same time, you're just not legally allowed to have it. So you can't have it. And when you do have it, now you're like Boosie and, you're selling your vehicle, or you're like Unfook and you're going to prison for 9 years and 6 months. It's terrible. So the case, this whole Young Thug case, it's continuing to rumble on. Not as much theatrics have happened as of late. They're still going through the jury process. I don't know if they'll ever get a jury. To find 12 people who can not work for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and get paid $25 a day, which is what we pay our jurors down here. It's tough. You are going to need people who have a very understanding job that's going to keep them on for, 6 months or 9 months and continue to pay them, because no one can go 9 months on $25 a day. Not in Atlanta. You can't do it. The only people who would possibly be able to do it are people like me who are retired, right? And, they have their free time. But then what does that say for Young Thug if you look over and the jury is full of these geriatric, retired people? That's not really a nice sample size of his community. So we're going to see what happens with the Melly case. I'm sorry, I keep saying Melly. Got Melly on my mind. We're going to see what happens with Young Thug, but who knows when that case is going to start? They can't even pick a jury.
I gotta ask an obvious question here. This is your area of expertise. It's not mine. But I do know that defendants, by law, they're granted the right to have a speedy trial. To my knowledge, the jury selection started in September, if I got that right. It is now July. That's all of damn near 9 months or so, 10 months.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that this case be dismissed? The charges be dumbed down? It goes from a RICO case to maybe some dumbed down charges. It almost feels like these defendants' rights are being violated by just sitting and languishing because the state can't get their stuff together.
Yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of these defendants are having their rights violated. You mentioned the few brothers that still don't have attorneys. They've been locked up for months with no attorney representation. The attorneys themselves, or some of them, are trying to fight to get out of the case because they're going broke. Young Thug has the money to pay his attorney, 6 figures. There's no problem. But some of these other boys are dirt poor and they don't have the money to pay. And the state has not given these attorneys enough money where these attorneys can handle this case and other cases. I think a lot of these attorneys have received in total $15,000 for this case. If this case lasts a year, they've received their $15,000, but they're not allowed to work on other cases because they're in this case every day of the week. So what attorney can run a business on $15,000 a year? Is zero, right? Though this case is so big that some of these attorneys are going broke. The jurors are going to go broke. There are brothers languishing in jail, in the Atlanta Fulton County Jail of all jails, and they don't have representation. It is an absolute circus. I don't think anybody but the DA wanted this case to be brought this way. I'm sure if you talk to the judge on the side, he'd be like, this is a disaster. It's using up all of the money, all of the resources. Could it be dumbed down? Maybe. That might be the smart thing. But there's been so much invested in this case already. Fanny would view this as a huge loss. She would have so much egg on her face if she spent all of these basically millions of dollars and then it's going to have the case just fizzle out. What Young Thug is being charged with are extremely serious crimes. There are murders involved, attempted murders. Lord knows all of these drugs, intent to distribute, trafficking. This is not a case where you can give Young Thug, 15 years to serve. This is a huge case. And so for
how much time is he looking at?
He's looking at life. He's looking at life. The charges against him are massive. And when you consider his status, his fame, we talked about people targeting Boosie. Well, Boosie's on one level. Young Thug, if we can be honest, is on a different level. And the fact that the DA has brought this case this way, it's going to be so hard for her to backtrack. And we need to remember, being the DA, that's an elected official, right? So she has a mortgage just like everybody else. She needs to pay her bills. She would view this as a serious blow, maybe the ultimate blow to her career.
But the truth of the matter is, it would be the ultimate blow to her career. She'd have all kind of egg on her face. I get it. But she chose to bring the case in this way. As you mentioned earlier, it's the biggest case that Atlanta has ever seen, which is insane in and of itself. But at some point, I would think somebody has to make a decision here. Like, how long can this thing go on before? And I don't know what checks and balances are in place. I don't know what laws are in place, but how long can something like this go on before somebody says enough? Like simply enough. We have literally been trying to pick a jury pool for 9-10 months. That hasn't happened. To your point, when the jury pool is finally picked, is it really a jury pool of any of these guys' peers? No. They're defendants now with no lawyers, and there are no lawyers in sight because, to your point, who can survive? Forget owning and running a law firm, but anybody who can survive off of $15,000 a year? It's virtually impossible. So I'm just wondering, are there any legal measures in place for situations and scenarios like this? Because this seems to be very much unprecedented.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're entitled to a trial, and you're entitled to your trial to start in a timely manner if you request it, but you're not entitled to your trial itself to be fast. All right, your trial could take days, it could take weeks. We saw the O.J. Simpson case, that took months. This case is also going to take months. I mean, it could take a year and a half, 2 years. And the only person who has the ability to really change the speed of this drastically would be Fannie, to make some modifications to these indictments. And
okay, so not even a judge in this case here. It would be Fannie herself, and obviously we know what this would do to her career if she decided to dumb down any of these charges.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
The judge really doesn't have any discretion over the charges. Now, the judge can decide, whether to aggregate some of these people, these defendants, or separate them, right? But the problem is with separating them is that you just have the same trial over and over and over and over. So a lot of times judges are like, well, it just makes more sense to have everybody together and have one trial than to have 30 separate trials, right? In terms of the judge's time, in terms of the witness's time, the expert's time. It's one thing to get an expert to show up to your trial once. It's another thing to get that same expert to show up 30 times. It's very difficult. So this is some of the issues that they're facing as to why this case is going on so long. But yeah, the only person who could really make substantive changes to the timeline would be Fannie, and how she chooses to bring this case and the charges that she's levying. Understood.
Okay, let's talk about another case that's in close proximity to this one. The YFN Lucci RICO case. Lucci recently turned down a 20-year plea deal. First and foremost, we're hearing this word RICO being thrown around a whole hell of a lot lately, like especially in the trials of these rappers. Are these defendants? Are they being overcharged in some way, in your opinion? Because when I think of RICO cases, I'm thinking of organized crime in the truest sense of the word. Here we go with another case that could go on forever. What do you know about that? And again, is this a case of somebody getting a book thrown at them when it could have been really, really dumbed down in terms of the charges?
Yeah, RICO, you're exactly right that a lot of times these RICO laws are used to really up the ante in terms of the charges in a particular case. This case is a little different just because of what is being alleged. But your point is absolutely well taken. And in fact, that was the whole point of the RICO laws. The RICO laws were enacted to really expand the power of the government to bring these criminal charges. It also has a civil action component as well, which is expanded to really beef up the powers of the state. And that's going on with Lucci as well. Lucci's been in jail for a while. In fact, his trial should have started, but his trial can't start because he's waiting on Melly, Not Melly, I keep saying Melly. He's waiting on Young Thug. Yeah, they're both out here in Atlanta. He's waiting on Young Thug to start, and that case ain't gonna start. Who knows when the case is gonna start, much less finish. And so he's waiting on that. And so he's got a long wait. Now, the facts of his case are pretty disastrous in terms of what is alleged. It's alleged that he was the driver in this drive-by. Now, most reasonable people would know that there's no good outcome of a drive-by, right? Drive-by shouldn't occur. But if there were a good outcome, considering your perspective, this drive-by had the opposite outcome. It was terrible. I don't know what Lucci thought was going to happen, but at the end of the day, what ended up happening was it's alleged that, he drove his luxury car filled with his friends in a rival gang's neighborhood, and there was a shootout from the car, this intended drive-by. What happened was one of Lucci's friends got hit in the abdomen, in the stomach. They ended up dumping him off at a fire station. One of his other friends, and again, these are the aggressors, right? This is the drive-by. One of his other friends was shot in the head, and it's alleged that they drove and then pushed him out of the car into these Atlanta streets just to die. So you've got one of your friends with a bullet in the stomach. One of your friends is shot in the head and dies. And now you are being charged with his murder. So it's an extremely serious case. He's not the one, of course, that murdered his friend. I don't know who they were trying to kill, but whoever they were trying to kill, allegedly, they were ready. So this was a terrible outcome. And now Lucci is looking like he might have to spend a lot of years in prison based on this one act.
But based on what, and I'm sorry to interject, based on what you just said, I want to make sure I understand and the audience understands exactly what happened. It's alleged that Lucci was the driver. Two of his friends were shooting at a potential target. That target shot back, hit one of Lucci's friends in the head, another in the stomach. Did I get that correct?
Yes. I'm not sure how many people were shooting back at Lucci's car. So I'm not sure if it was the same person that hit the two friends, or if it was different people. But at the end of the day, it's alleged that Lucci intended to do this drive-by, got his friends, went into the rival gang's territory and started shooting at this house where there was a gathering, and they returned fire. One person or multiple people returned fire, and one person was shot in the stomach, and then one of his friends was shot in the head and then dumped out of the car to die in the street.
Okay, understand. Stop there for a second. Was there anyone in the rival gang who has been arrested and charged with this murder, in addition to obviously Lucci? And then educate us on, where does the RICO component come into this?
Yes, no one has been arrested from the rival gang, to my knowledge, which is a good thing. You look at the Travis Rudolph situation. If someone is bringing violence to you, you would hope that you could respond to defend yourself defend your friends, your family, right? So if someone's shooting at you from a car, you have the right to return fire to protect yourself. In terms of the RICO, this was one act of a gang, right? So they are alleging that Lucci is part of a gang, and this is just one of the things that this gang, one of the activities that this gang has done to further the gang. So, he's being charged, of course, with weapons violations. He's being charged with felony murder. He's being charged with the RICO. I think there's a drug component as well. So it's a very deep case, but you are right to ask, where does the RICO come in? But whenever you are in a gang, they're going to look to go RICO to tie all of these disparate incidences, all of these separate incidences into one enterprise, one criminal enterprise, and then charge every member of that enterprise.
Wow. And needless to say, Lucci is looking at life.
I mean,
if they're giving him a plea of 20 years, I gotta believe if he takes it to trial and blows trial, we probably won't see him anymore.
I mean, he'd probably get out, but it would be tons of time. And the maximum absolutely would be life, especially with the RICO and the felony murder. I mean, now he was the driver, right? But he's still going to be charged with the murder of his friend because of how felony murder works. If you conspire to commit a felony and one of your co-defendants in committing that felony dies, you can be on the hook for that death. So it's one thing to go to murder, take Young Thug, right? They're saying that, he's part of these murders, and let's say someone gets killed. If Young Thug has to pay for that killing, you say, okay, well, Young Thug was accused of being in a gang and this was a rival gang member, so he's going to get tied to this killing of the rival gang member. That's one thing. But to be tied to the killing of your own gang member and having to serve time for your own gang member, that's like the worst, right? Because that was your friend, that was your homie. He got killed, and now you're doing prison time. You didn't pull out the gun. You didn't squeeze the trigger. You didn't kill that man. You love that man. But now, because that man is dead, he paid a price in his life, and now you're going to go to prison 20, 30, 40 years.
Last question. I'm assuming it's the same DA behind this.
Yep, Fanny. I mean, she is all about RICO. She loves RICO.
All right. Let's bring this thing to New York City. Are you familiar with the rapper Chef G and what's going on in his case?
Yeah, Chef G. It's interesting. He was already in jail when he caught these charges. I mean, he caught these two conspiracy to commit murder charges. And it's a very deep case. And it's just sad to all of these cases kind of have the same theme or thread running through them, in the sense that you look at Chef G, extremely popular drill rapper, making tons of money, has hundreds of millions of downloads on Spotify and YouTube. He's getting bread. What is he accused of doing with this money? He's accused of taking the money and then plowing it back into his gang organization. He's accused of paying bonuses to people who kill rival gang members, offering bounties, offering jewelry to any of his crew that kills the rival gang. There's evidence that he took a portion of his crew to a very fancy and expensive Manhattan steak dinner to celebrate one of the drive-bys that resulted in the death of one of the rival gang members, and a few bystanders were hit. He's accused of actually participating in these things as well. There's one incident where it's alleged that he was the getaway driver, or I guess the driver in a drive-by, kind of like Lucci, that resulted in 2 or 3 bystanders being hit. And it's like, man, you've made it. You know, I'm a little YouTuber myself. I can't imagine having, you know, hundreds of millions of views. If you're making this money, if you've got this fame, why are you associating yourself with this element? And then why are you participating in it? Why are you doing drive-bys, right? It's not looking good for him. He's got some very serious charges. They've got, you know, text messages that he was sending his sister, apparently, where he's saying, you know, yeah, we got him. And he's sending photos to his sister of the victims of the rival gang members. It's not looking good. And again, he was about to get out. He was in jail already on a gun charge. They were saying that he was masterminding so much of this from jail before he got locked up. And now that he was about to get out, they arrested him again. And now he's looking at some extremely serious time.
Okay, we spoke about RICO earlier in the conversation. You said in the Chef G case, he allegedly participated in some of the crimes he's accused of. He used his own money to fund gang activity. So is this is he in these 32 other defendants that were arrested in this sweep, are they being charged in a RICO case? So this is a RICO as well.
Yes.
Damn.
They are.
Wow.
It's just all, they got them all for conspiracy to commit all of these crimes. I mean, like you said, it was like 30 men and women, apart from Chef and his other co-defendant, his fellow rappers. It was like 32 in total.
Yeah. Okay. And there's no expected date for this trial to start at the moment.
No. And it, you know, there's going to be, you know, whenever you have so many defendants, when you have 30 co-defendants, 32 co-defendants, a lot of stuff takes place. A lot of times the prosecution is not rushing to trial, because if you've got 30 people, some of these people are going to flip. Some of these people are not with it. You know, they're not like Unfook. You know, Glanville took all of his time, 9 years, 6 months. Unfook was just sitting there. He didn't even blink. He don't care, right? A lot of these people, when you have 30 co-defendants, are not like that. You know, you start talking about 3 years and people start flipping out and they're ready to snitch.
And the prosecutors know this.
Yeah.
The prosecutors absolutely know this. They know we bring in this number of people, the odds are 100% in our favor that one or many of them are going to look at the situation and say, oh, we already know how this goes. The first one of us that goes and talks gets the best deal. And they sit around and wait. I have to believe that they purposely stall or purposely say, hey, we need time to build this case, Your Honor. Give us time. Somebody's going to be tired of sitting in that jail cell and say, look, I got information that I think you guys need to hear. What deal can we cut?
100%. 100%. And the prosecutors, they're all ears. They're all ears. You know, the prosecution, they get to go home at night. They get to sleep in their bed at night. They don't really care how long this case takes. They're government workers. They're going to get paid either way. You know, whether a case takes a week or a month, they're going to get their same salary. You know, it's not like they're going to get bonuses or commissions if the case goes faster. What they really want are convictions. That's what really makes their career, to get their conviction rate up. So to the extent that you have people who will turn state's evidence, people who will testify against their co-defendants, that can only help to increase the likelihood of getting a conviction and thereby advance their career. So yeah, they are more than willing to have people take a seat in the back and, you know, chill out for a while, have them sit to see who's gonna start snitching. And when you talk about 32 people, men and women, a lot of times you're gonna get people who talk. You know, especially when you look at women who are arrested in these things, a lot of women have these children who they, you know, really love and really care about, and they really want to go home to these kids, which is an added incentive for these women to start talking out. And also these women are kind of tangentially related to these crimes. They're only related a lot of times to the extent that their man, their boyfriend is involved. So they have relatively little to gain from being silent. Whereas if they snitch, they can go home to their kids and have their freedom, and they don't feel necessarily like, you know, they're a rat or they're not really tied to the game like that. They're not tied to the street code. They're not wedded to it a lot of the times. So you start arresting women in this stuff, and they'll start to sing.
Yeah. Okay, another New York rapper, Casanova 2 times. He recently pleaded guilty to charges in gang-related federal racketeering case. He's another one who was accused in drug dealing and robbery and funding the gang with monies he got from the rap music. He got something like 15 years. In this case, do you think, you know, he got off easy? I mean, 15 years is a lot of time, but would you say that was a good deal for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was looking at 60, you know?
Correct.
So that's a quarter of the time. You know, how old is he? He's in his 30s, maybe 32, 34. So, you know, he'll get out at some point and be able to live, you know, whatever's left of his life to that extent. You know, this case has been followed because of him getting slashed by an inmate in the jail. This Lugo guy slashed his face, and then Casanova turned around and chased him, and with other men slashed his face as well. Apparently, it was just his face was saturated in blood. That's what the officers were saying. But, you know, you have this type of action, and then what does Casanova do? You know, he sits down there in his cell and he writes a letter to the judge, and he's basically asking for leniency. He's basically, you know, renouncing his any gang affiliation. He's saying that, you know, he's never in a gang. He's only used the gang image to kind of promote his career. You know, he would never harm a fly. And, you know, where does that really get you? Not a lot of the times, but every now and then you will get people who will write letters to judges, inmates, and they think it's going to help. And it never helps. To be honest, you know, judges never take these letters seriously. What happens if you write a letter to the judge, the person who's going to read the letter, I mean, depending on if you're in jail or not, it could be intercepted by the jail, opened up by the jail officials to read, you know, what the heck's going on. And then maybe it's transferred to the judge's secretary, who is the person that opens the mail. You know, it's not like these judges are sitting here opening and reading their own mail. They have assistants and secretaries to do it. And so the assistant or the secretary will read the letter and will tell the judge, hey, we got this letter. A lot of times judges say, well, listen, I don't even want to read it. Let's just let both sides know that we've got this letter. Let the prosecutors know that we've got this letter, and, you know, that be that. So, when you sit down and you pen this heartfelt letter thinking that's going to work, I think Tory Lanez did the same thing. They don't really understand that at best it's a waste of time, and at worst it can really put your street credibility in question if you're saying that you were never part of the gang and you don't like the gang, and to the extent that you try to extricate yourself, sometimes it can be flipped back on you, and you're just not going to get any benefit from writing these letters. But he had some exposure. Certainly, he and his attorneys felt like there was a lot of evidence against him. No one who takes 15 years thinks that there's not a lot of evidence against them. It's one thing to be offered 3 years and you're kind of waffling, maybe I'll take it to trial because I didn't do it. But if you accept 15 years, if you accept 20 years, you've got some exposure, right? And you feel like that's better than going to trial and then risking getting 60 years. Because, you do your 15, maybe you do 85%, you get out. It's more time than you want, but at least you'll be able to get out and live some of your life if you survive. Him being slashed all up. Sometimes people, they pass away in prison. Hopefully it doesn't happen to him. Hopefully he's able to serve his time in peace and get out. But here again, the gang life, very successful rapper, but also tied into these gang affiliations and is going down. I don't know when people are going to get the message, and I hate to sound like some old guy. I'm 46 years old. I understand the optics, but no one can really say that it's worth it. I saw a video of Casanova that he did, some interview that he did. He was talking about, the gang life isn't worth it because you're going to go to prison. When you go to prison, no one remembers you. No one cares about you. Your family members pass away. You think about these people all the time, but their life just goes on. And now here he is years later accepting a 15-year deal, right? I don't know when we're going to get the message, but there's just no good outcomes. You can look at it from the smallest rapper, the people in the Young Thug case who don't even have attorneys. They got caught up in this mess. They are poor. They have no money to hire even an attorney for a RICO case. You look at someone poor like that all the way up to someone like a Chef G or someone like a Young Thug. It doesn't work out for any of them. But I guess we still gonna try.
No, it really doesn't. There's no good outcomes. Even in the best case scenario, you get off. You have spent so much money and gone through so much stress and everything else to get off. It's just no good outcome. Let's talk about a different type of outcome, and I believe that this is in your area of expertise. Larsa Pippen. She was Larsa Pippen. We could talk a whole hell of a lot about this woman, but we'll just stick to the legal side. She was awarded half of Scottie Pippen's retirement for life from the NBA. Is this a normal ruling in your experience?
Yeah. I mean, if we take a step back and look, what do we got? We got a long-term marriage. They were married for 19, 20 years. They have 4 kids, right? One of them is still a minor. One is still, I think, 14 years old. So a lot of people, especially women, would say, hey, if you're with a dude for 20 years and gave him 4 kids, you kind of deserve half, right? I mean, how much do you want to give her? Now, of course, Scottie Pippen could have been smart and gotten a prenup, but he decided not to do that. And this is the result. You lose half of your retirement. And it's just so fascinating, her case in particular, because even though she has 4 kids, she's saying that she wants another kid. But this time she wants the kid with Michael Jordan's son, Marcus Jordan. This lady is 48 years old talking about she wants a baby by Marcus Jordan, who is like 32. I mean, to me, 48 doesn't seem very old because I'm 46. But I couldn't imagine myself at 32 getting with a 48-year-old. I mean, she's 50. A 32-year-old with a 32-year-old man with a 50-year-old woman. And apparently they're all in love. They've started this new podcast that they have together, and they're in it to win it. Now, I think Michael Jordan recently, some reporter just called him and was like, hey, do you approve of this relationship? And he just kind of laughed it off and said, no, he does not.
Emphatically, he was like, hell no, as he should.
As he should.
Shout to Michael Jordan.
Yeah, if you've got I don't know. I don't have any kids, but if I was old enough to have a 32-year-old son, I don't know if I'd want him. I mean, I don't want to be ageist. I'm sure there are a lot of 50-year-old women who are fine. They're nice people. But you would think, I mean, that's just a huge age gap. And starting...
It goes so much deeper than the age gap. For God's sakes, come on. Like, let's just call this what it is. He and Scottie Pippen, no matter what their relationship is today, they were friends, teammates, co-workers, if you will, 30 plus years ago. Doing amazing things together. When Marcus Jordan was just being born, you don't want to see, no matter what the relationship is, you don't want to see your son with the ex-wife of a guy you work with. Like, come on, like that's I could see where Jordan comes from. And here's the deal: Jordan's a public figure. He knows how to handle media. I was so proud of him for emphatically speaking his truth. Because he could have just as easily said no comment and kept it moving. But for him to be like, nah, like I understand that's my son, but I can't co-sign this. I ain't riding with my kid on this. Like his last name is Jordan and he can have any girl in the world. That's the one he chooses? Nah, I ain't with it.
Yeah. And, I agree with you to an extent. But let's just say I was in the NBA and you were in the NBA and we're teammates and we play together and win all these championships. We both have kids. I have a son, you have a daughter. Years pass and our son and daughter start dating. And, I guess that would be different because this is actually his teammate's wife. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I was waiting for you. Like, I don't know where you was about to go, but this is a little different.
If it was the sons and the daughters, I guess it'd be different. The wife is a bit much, to be honest. And I'm not sure how much that would matter if the wife were, let's say, like, I don't know. It's just messy. I'm trying to be charitable.
If the wife, if this was the ex-wife of Isaiah Thomas, maybe I could look at it different.
That's what I'm saying.
Jordan played against Isaiah. Jordan played against so many other. Maybe it would be, but Jordan's right hand. I mean, you can't speak Jordan without speaking Scottie.
That's true.
You can't. I just don't. I mean, even from a standpoint of optics, it just don't look good.
Optics, it doesn't look good. You're exactly
optics,
right.
It doesn't look good. But even the bro code and just things you don't do, I don't know that I could co-sign. Matter of fact, I know I can't co-sign. I won't co-sign. It's just some lines you shouldn't cross. That's one of them. Especially when, and I'm gonna go one step further. My God. How many dudes in the NBA is this woman going to sleep with?
That's the thing. That's the thing. It's like her specifically. That's the thing. That's why none of us would want our sons to be with this lady. It's because of who she is as a person. The whole teammate thing, yeah, I mean, that's one thing. But the fact, she's sleeping with Future, which in itself should disqualify you for wife material in my eyes, right? It's the fact of who she is. It's this huge age difference, where that this man can get a better woman. Why are you at 32 dealing with Future's leftovers, Future's 50-year-old leftovers? Why are you settling for that? You hear all these women saying that they don't want to settle and they're not going to settle. And then you're 32 with a damn near 50-year-old ex-Future girlfriend. Or I don't even know if Future was claiming her, to be honest, which is even worse.
Nah, he wasn't claiming her. Actually,
it's because of who she is. I get the whole teammate thing. I get that,
like she must have some hellified box, man. Like, like who she is. Like, it's a whole lot of bad chicks out there. I don't look at her and be like, oh my gosh, she's gorgeous. Like, I just gotta have her. Like, this woman must have dynamite in between her legs because she's moving through that NBA something different. And then to land on Marcus Jordan and to get him to wife her, I don't know. I would just say she got something different. Like, that box must be different. But I want to go back to legal issues, if you don't mind. Not sure if you're aware of this, but on June 30th of this year, 2023, Florida Governor DeSantis, and I don't know where their divorce took place, but I know she lives in Florida, and I believe Scotty lives in Florida, so I don't know if the divorce took place there. But he actually signed a landmark alimony reform bill eliminating permanent alimony. He just did this maybe 4 or 5 days ago. Would this affect her decision to get lifetime alimony from Scotty?
That's a great question. And it reminded me of a quick comment that I made earlier about Scottie Pippen having a prenup. And I do want to say, thinking about it, that he had a prenup. Now, I can tell you as an attorney who's drafted prenups that prenups say a lot of things. And one of the things, Scotty actually made a motion to the court to change his prenup such that she could not get alimony. A lot of guys have prenups which will allow for alimony in all types of certain circumstances. I drafted a prenup for one of my best friends, and he wanted it structured in a way that the prenup would expire after 15 years. And so and they've been married now, I guess 18 or 19 years. So, well, I guess it hasn't been that long. Maybe like 15 years. They've been married a long time. But the point of it is, I don't know what Scotty's prenup said about the alimony, but apparently it allowed it. And that's why she's getting it. And that's why Scotty had petitioned the court to allow him to modify the alimony provision that's in his prenup, which apparently the court did not do. Now, this whole issue of Florida eliminating permanent alimony, I think that's amazing. Now, it only applies to people who are living in Florida, right? And you really get divorced in Florida. I need to take a look at the specific law. I know there was a huge issue about whether it would be retroactive or not, whether you could have already been ordered to pay permanent alimony, then you move to Florida and now you don't have to do that. That doesn't seem like that would be the case. But certainly for new cases, new divorce cases that started in Florida, that originated in Florida, it looks like they're going to put some rules to how alimony is formulated. And I am all in favor of that. Here in Georgia, we don't have any rules about alimony. There's none of this, oh, well, you need to be married 10 years before you can get alimony, or you're entitled to alimony for a certain amount of time that is equal to half of the lifespan of the marriage or a third of the lifespan of the marriage. We don't have that. And so when I'm negotiating with an attorney here and we're talking about alimony, we really don't have any guidelines because you just got to know what this judge typically does in your particular case. So the fact that Florida has taken the step to really put guidelines in place and to limit it where it should be limited, I think that's amazing. You know, in California, where they just routinely hand out permanent alimony, I think that's insane. You know, there are a lot of reasons not to live in California, and I think the divorce laws are certainly one of them. I mean, so many men get screwed by California divorce laws. So I think that Florida is taking the step in the right direction by setting out guidelines and letting everybody know, hey, if you want alimony, this is what's going to be considered. This is how it's going to be calculated. That's what we do in child support. Every state of the nation has these child support worksheets. You don't ever have to argue or guess about what the child support should be because you've got these child support calculators. Georgia, there's no calculator. There's no rule. It's just whatever the judge wants to pull out of their head that day. And that leads to a lot of arguing, a lot of wasted resources and cases taking much longer than they should because both parties are jockeying for this alimony and no one really knows how much the judge is going to give. So the fact that Florida is laying out these guidelines saying, hey, this is how we're going to calculate it, I think it's amazing. I don't know if that's going to affect Scotty's case or not. I would think it would not. And I'm not even sure what state they're in, to be honest. I'm not sure if they're in Florida or not. But I think in general, what Florida's doing is on the right path.
Yeah, I would agree, especially considering, like you said, there is no calculator. There are no set parameters in place in which you could say, okay, we can build off of this formula right here. Blueface. Everybody familiar with him. He set to plead guilty in a Las Vegas strip club shooting. Are you familiar with that case, number one? And number two, what type of time is he looking at?
Yeah, that's an interesting case. It doesn't look like he's looking at any time. And he shot a guy. Yeah, the prosecutors, they said that they're open to probation. You know, he was down there at the Euphoric Gentlemen's Club out there in Vegas. And some guy made a joke that he didn't like. And, you know, they kind of got back into it and Blueface's crew ended up kind of roughing up this guy. Well, later on, Blueface is outside and his crew is outside. And then this big truck drives up. It was like a F-350, this big truck. I don't know what it was. But the driver of the truck is the same guy that they roughed up. And the driver's like, well, which one of y'all hit me? You know, who was it that hit me? And then it's kind of hard to tell, but the truck lurches forward while Blueface pulls out a gun and starts shooting into the truck. Now, is it self-defense? Was the truck trying to hit him? It's hard to tell. And the truck kind of speeds off. Blueface hit the truck multiple times, multiple bullet holes in the truck, and ended up hitting the guy in his left hand. The prosecution charged Blueface with firing a weapon into an occupied vehicle, and then they charged him for a battery, I think, for the hand. But they've stated they're open to probation. So something, I don't know whether it's the video or the police investigation, something is leading the prosecution to believe that the guy in the truck is the one who kind of started the whole shooting incident. And so they're fine if he gets off, which I think is interesting. Usually when you fire a gun into a vehicle, the prosecution isn't going to take too kindly to that. But if Blueface can make out a self-defense claim that this man was in a truck and he was about to run me over and I pulled out my gun to shoot him in self-defense, you know, maybe he can get off. We kind of saw a similar situation with the Travis Rudolph case where our man Travis fired damn near 40 rounds into this car that was driving away, and he got off in a few hours. So maybe the Nevada prosecutors are like, nobody died. He got some property damage. He got nicked in the hand. We'll let him plead out to a felony, right? We'll let him plead out to firing into an occupied vehicle, but probate his sentence and let's move on with other cases. So that's an interesting case because I was surprised that the prosecution was so open to letting him go. When I say letting him go, I'm talking about the probation. It's still a felony charge that he has. So we've seen the problem with being a convicted felon, but they're not asking for any jail time.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially, and I'm listening to every word you said. You're talking about self-defense. I saw the video just like many people did of him firing this gun. I don't know where self-defense begins or ends, and I was a little shocked at the fact that he could be possibly looking at no jail time, considering the truck was driving away. So if you're still continuing to shoot after the truck is, half a block away, is your life still in danger? Is it still self-defense? I mean, it's just an interesting situation. So,
yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what happened with the Rudolph case, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
But we saw what the jury thought of that. I mean, the jury was in and out. They were like, let this man go. So people are willing to come to the defense of people who are defending themselves. And
Correct.
if you can convince people that you were defending yourself, they will ride with you the whole way. Everybody is tired of crime. Everybody is tired of violence. Everybody wants it to stop. So if you are going to threaten, if you are going to initiate some violence, then people are fine with you receiving, the raw end of the deal if you're going to be the one that starts it.
Correct. Okay, let's turn our attention for a second to Soulja Boy. Soulja Boy and his legal team, they filed a motion for a new trial. The jury awarded his ex-girlfriend, Kyla Myers, something like $235,000. There was an assault and kidnapping case that was filed against him by his ex-girlfriend. They gave her $235,000 there. And then an additional $236,000 in punitive damages, bringing the grand total to something like $500,000. Hopefully Soulja Boy has that money. Here we go again. Do you think the punishment fits the crime? Do you think he'll be granted a new trial in this case? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, he's asking for a new trial, and he's basically just stating every reason. He's stating that he didn't get a fair trial. He's saying that there wasn't sufficient evidence for the jury to be able to rule the way that they did. He's saying that there's jury misconduct, right? He's saying just everything. Everything was wrong. I want a new trial. And does the punishment fit the crime? Well, it depends on what you think the crime is. According to her version, I would say yes. She's saying that she showed up at his house. There was a party going on, and they had been on again, off again, boyfriend and girlfriend for years. And she was trying to leave, but her car didn't work. She got in a argument with his assistant or his manager, and then she got attacked. So she was in a fight. And then Soulja Boy comes up and starts kicking her and telling her that she's going to die while she's on the ground. Then he has one of his assistants take her to, somewhere out back to the garage or something and tie her up. And, according to her, she was able to convince him to let her go after hours. But the way that she had to do that, she had to suck him off. So she sucks him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that part.
That's
Go
the
ahead.
thing, right? So she sucks him off, and then he lets her go, and then, you know, she's able to go home or whatever. She had 3 broken ribs, 3 fractured ribs. She had bruises all about her face. So she has some real injuries. If you believe that happened, then 500,000, you know, getting kidnapped and tied up for hours and having to suck some random dude off to get out, that's worth 500,000. Now, his side, of course, is completely different. He's saying that they had had a conversation prior and he had broken up with her. She was mad. So she showed up uninvited and drunk. Because she was drunk and driving, she smashed her car, which is why her car was inoperable. His manager, the woman, comes out and tells her, hey, you know, what the hell's going on? We got all these people in here. You're causing a scene. You weren't invited. You need to leave. He comes out and basically co-signs that, tells her to go away, and then he goes back to the party. He doesn't know anything about the garage. He doesn't know anything about anybody being sucked off. He doesn't know anything about broken ribs. He doesn't know anything about bruises on her face. So he's like, listen, stuff might have happened at my property, but that's between them. This lady wasn't even invited. Why am I having to pay $500,000? How could the jury even thought that? So there's not a lot of agreement between what he said and what she said. But, you know, if you can show fractured ribs and you can get on the stand and cry and, you know, talk about how you had to suck a stranger off to get released, that can be persuasive. And, you know, I don't know how much Soulja Boy is worth. You know, you look this stuff up. Google says he's worth 10 million. You can't really trust Google on that, of course. Who knows what he has, but, you know, he'll probably be okay, but he's pissed off about it. He's paying his legal team even more money. If he had 10 million, I mean, I don't know. He's lost 5 already. Maybe you just let it go, but then you don't want that on your reputation, right? That you're kicking women when they're down, kicking them in the chest, breaking their ribs, telling them they're going to die. So maybe because of his image, maybe he has to appeal the case. Maybe what she's saying is a lie and he's right all along. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe he's like, this isn't what happened. I want my appeal. But it's hard for juries because, again, when we're on a jury, we're not there. We didn't see it, right? So you don't have, if all of the information is right here, if you're on the jury, you only get a slice of it. And then you're having to say, how much are you going to pay to this woman? Well, how much I pay to her is going to depend on what happened to her, but I don't know the full range of what happened to her because I wasn't there. She's telling me what happened. He's telling me what happened. They're contradicting each other. I wasn't there. I don't know what the hell happened. Just give him 500,000. Give her 500,000. I don't know. That, you know, sometimes these juries make decisions they don't know. Sometimes they're just pulling numbers, just like these judges in Atlanta just making up alimony numbers. These juries will make up verdict numbers. They'll make up compensatory damages numbers. They'll make up punitive damages. A lot of people would have given that, if they really believed her, a lot of people would have given her way more than $250,000. A lot of women would not like to go to a situation where they've shown up at this place and now they're getting attacked by all these people. They're getting kicked in the stomach and in the ribs. Then they get kidnapped for hours in the garage and now they're having to do something to some stranger. A lot of women would say that's worth way more than $250,000. That's traumatic. This lady, if this happened this way, you know, she might have to go to therapy. She might be in a relationship and that incident kind of affects her relationship, her sexual activity with the guy that she's in a relationship with, I don't know. So how did the jury come to $250,000 to punish him for that act? It could have been 200,000, it could have been 500,000, it could have been $1 million. People just making up numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess if it happens the way that Kyla said it happened, 500,000 seems not only reasonable but might be low. So, okay, let's move this thing on. Jonathan Majors. He's set to go to trial August 3rd. I believe it's in New York City on an assault case. This is an A-list actor. He is the main villain in all of the upcoming Marvel movies. Kang. He was also the antagonist in the Creed 3 movie. This guy's A-level. And, he's now about to go to court on an assault charge. I believe it is a domestic charge at that, which can ruin everything for him. And he's claiming it didn't happen. What do you know about this case, and how do you think it's going to turn out?
Yeah, it's kind of the same situation with Soulja Boy in the sense that it's he said, she said, right? It appears that they were in the backseat of a car, whether it's a taxi or a private car, and he got a message. And the girlfriend wanted to see the message. I think everybody is kind of, okay, that happened. And then the stories diverge. She's saying that he got mad and hit her in the head with an open hand, causing a laceration behind her ear, bruising, hurt her hand. She was saying that, he grabbed her by the throat. Very serious allegations, especially for someone, like you said, in the public eye. Now his version is a lot different. And when he goes to court, his attorney has made clear that they plan to present evidence showing that he never laid a hand on her. They are going to say that they're saying that they're going to have the driver of the car who's going to testify that, he never hit her, he never slapped her, he never touched her. In fact, it was her. It was her who was hitting and scratching and attacking him, trying to get to that phone. Now, none of us were there, but we can all imagine a situation where a man and a woman sit in the backseat of a car and the man gets a text message. Usually, if that happens, it's not going to be the man initially who's going to haul off and hit the woman in the side of the head. Usually, it's going to be the woman who tries to grab the phone, and now there's a fight over the phone. One of the arguments that Jonathan's attorney is going to say is they have text messages where she admitted, she recanted her story and admitted that she was the one that caused the incident. Now, when you read the text message, it's not so definitive because what she's saying in there in part is she says, well, I'm going to tell the cops that it was my fault for trying to grab the phone. You say, well, fair enough. But if I'm in the back seat of the car with my wife and then I get a crazy text from my side chick and my wife grabs the phone, how is it that she's getting these lacerations behind her ear? Right? Just because my wife grabs my phone doesn't give me the right to to kind of go upside her head, right? And it might be a reaction. It might be something that's unintentional. And he might not have done it at all. But they're saying that the text messages show that he's innocent. They're saying that the driver showed that it was her who was trying to get to that phone. They've got surveillance videos of her at the club the same night. And she was saying that her hand was injured during the altercation. Well, she's at the club grabbing drinks from the bar using that same right hand. She's at the club with the iPhone, using it same right hand. How is your hand so injured from this incident if you're at the club same night using all of your hand? And, the next day, back up. He gets arrested by the police officers, and the police officers are in his house, and they've got body cam footage. And this is another piece of evidence or information that Jonathan wants to use to prove that he's innocent of these charges, is that, number one, the officers are commenting about how nice his house is. And the implication is, how do you have, such a fancy place being a black guy? Because they didn't recognize him. Also, the woman can be heard talking to the officers where she's saying that she doesn't remember what happened. What's the problem? She says that 19 times. Well, what does that mean? That she says that she doesn't remember what happened, and then the cops are asking her again. I don't remember what happened. Asking her again. I don't remember what happened. Jonathan's like, why are you interrogating this lady? She's already told you that she doesn't remember what happened. In fact, she told you 19 times. Why is it that you will not stop asking her these questions until she tells you something? You're trying to coach her. You are trying to get her to say something that will give you probable cause to arrest this man. He's like, listen, how can I be guilty of this when I'm the one that called the police? She was asleep from that night in the club, half naked in my closet. Why is she sleeping in my closet? Because she threw up on the bed. Right? This lady is not stable. He probably really, if we're honest, and a lot of us men get in this situation where we're dealing with crazy women. It never works out long term. Shouldn't have been dealing with her knowing how she is, but now he's in this situation. Now, he has filed a domestic abuse complaint against her. And the NYPD is taking it seriously. In fact, they've issued an I-card, an investigation card, which gives them probable cause to arrest her. Now, I'm not sure if they've effectuated that arrest or not. I don't think they have. But as it stands right now, they can go and have her arrested, which is common. I always see this so many times when couples, whether they're dating or whether they're married, a lot of couples fight. And I mean fist fight. That's the way we don't talk about it, but a lot of couples, that's the way they resolve their disputes physically, especially when alcohol is involved or drugs are involved. In this case, this lady was taking all these pills. She was at the bar with all these drinks. She's a dancer, right? So it's not like she lives a conventional life. And a lot of times things get mutual, where the woman will attack the man and then the man responds, and now they're both bruised up. Now they're both scratched up. Now they both go to jail. That's super common. A lot of times it's more common, if we're honest, that the men go to jail because there's a bias, right? But it's super common, even if the woman doesn't go to jail, that it's kind of a mutual combat situation. At any rate, the officers in New York now have the probable cause to go arrest her. Are they going to go arrest this woman? Who knows? But they can. They probably will at some point, but it's probably not a high priority. So like you said, we got Jonathan. He thinks he's going to be found not guilty. These are misdemeanor charges, and he's walking into the courthouse with Megan Good on one hand, which is fine, but then in the other hand, he's holding a Bible. And I'm like, all right, if Melly enters a courtroom holding the Bible, I get it. If Lucci enters the courtroom with a Bible, I get it. You got these misdemeanor charges, but you can leave your Bible at home, right? This is for the optics.
To his credit, I mean, he's an actor. He don't have a reputation to protect. And,
You're right.
From what I understand, Megan Good is very much into the church. She was married to a minister. So maybe she's like, listen, buddy, you need to bring God with you to this courtroom.
Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm cynical, having been an attorney for 20 years. But to walk into a courthouse on a misdemeanor charge holding the Bible is a little for me. Maybe it's me. Okay, maybe you're right.
He ain't worried about his street cred.
Like for a misdemeanor, like I get pulled over for a ticket and I'm walking in with a Bible. Like, okay. But that's not to be fair, because again, like you're saying, even though this is a misdemeanor case, a lot is riding on it.
No, and I was waiting for you to finish. Like, let's really think about this. You know, we live in a Me Too world. We live in a world. You know, he's not being charged with punching a bartender in the face. He's not being accused of punching a gang member in the face. He's being accused of domestic violence against a woman, and let alone a white woman. Let's just call it what it is.
White woman. Let's say it.
Let's call it a white woman with blonde hair.
No.
So you know, you made it into Marvel Studios, into the Marvel universe, and you're not a one and done. You know, your character is going to stretch. You are the main villain for all of their upcoming films. So there's a hell of a lot riding on it, considering Marvel can't associate themselves with a domestic abuser, a guy who hits women. They just can't. So yeah, on the surface, this is a misdemeanor. But I can guarantee you that just as we speak about basketball players violating morals clauses in their contracts, I'm sure he has something very similar in his contract. And they're waiting to see the outcome. And you know, that morals clause, it's a moving scale, because what really constitutes you violating a morals clause? It could be anything, truth be told. And if he is found guilty, you can almost best believe that they are going to recast him with somebody who bears his likeness. And there will be a new king, and his days of being a Hollywood A-lister will probably be done. So I'll probably be carrying that Bible too.
Listen, I think you're right. I think he should just ditch Megan Good and just walk in with his pastor. Just go full, walk in hand to hand with your pastor, because you're right. A lot is riding on this. A lot. So maybe that's just me being cynical. You know, you saw Johnny Depp in the same situation. He had so much to lose as well from these false allegations from Amber Heard. You know, a lot of men are in these types of situations. A woman's word carries a lot of power. You know, we're talking about Soulja Boy. Did it happen? Did it not happen? Who knows? But when a woman speaks in this society, a lot of people are willing to get in line and co-sign that and to really believe it, whether or not it's true.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm so happy you brought up the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. Johnny Depp had the money to fight. He was found guilty, I believe, in the UK, in London, of laying hands on Amber. But you know, he brought it back to the US, and he did it. It's not, I don't need the money. I'm not working. Like I'm literally blackballed by Hollywood. Disney dropped me. I'm Captain Jack Sparrow. And they literally kicked me out of the Pirates of the Caribbean movie that I'm the main character in. I can't get work. And if it were not for him having millions and millions and millions of dollars to bring on the legal team that he brought on, to bring on all of the experts, the private investigators, the people who aggregated all of the text messages and films and went through tons and tons of metadata and photos showing, oh, you said he beat you on August 1st? Well, August 1st in the evening, you were here dolled up. Where's the beating at? Like, but he had the money to do it. And he spent tons of money just to be able to get his name and his reputation back in Hollywood. So absolutely, Jonathan Majors has a hell of a lot riding on this case.
100%. Totally agree.
Okay, before we let you up out of here, you made the statement that a woman's word, it carries a hell of a lot of power. Here we go again. Bill Cosby. He's accused of sexual assault by 9 women in Nevada. Another lawsuit brought up against this man. Is it ever going to end? Like, Bill Cosby, is it, here we go again.
Yeah, it's never going to end for him. It's just never going to end for him. For multiple reasons. Number one, he was doing things in the 70s that are not socially acceptable today. Now, whether they were socially acceptable in the 70s, it's a different question, but they're certainly not in 2023. And people are trying to crucify him for that. In fact, legislatures are rolling back laws. They're changing statute of limitation laws so that these types of cases can be brought. And so that's why these 9 women in Nevada are able to bring this case, because the legislature changed the statute of limitation requirements, which allows these cases to be brought to light. So, of course, they're saying that Bill Cosby drugged them and had sex with them, right? So they're alleging all types of sexual abuse violations, false imprisonment violations, and he's in some trouble. Not only does he have to defend himself against these cases in Nevada, but I think California, he's got cases out there that are starting up. And I want to say in another state, maybe New York as well, he's got more cases just like this that are coming up. He recently lost a case like this. He was found liable for sexually assaulting this 16-year-old at the Playboy Mansion in 1975. Now, 75 apparently was a different era, because I don't know what the hell a 16-year-old is doing at the Playboy Mansion, right? But from an attorney's point of view, I think how are you supposed to defend yourself against something that happened in 1975? I wasn't even born yet. Almost none of the viewers of this channel were born in 75. And this woman is saying, hey, when I was 16, you did this to me. How are you going to mount your defense? You don't have any witnesses that you can call on, especially in a he said, she said case like this. 1975, you don't have any forensics. 1975, you don't have any videotape evidence. 1975, you don't have any cell phone GPS evidence to show you were not at the Playboy Mansion at that time. You were 20 miles down the street. It is almost impossible for you to collect the evidence that you need to properly defend yourself when you're being charged with a case that happened 25, 23, what's that, 47 years ago, 40, 50 years ago? You can't do it.
It's 48 years ago. So I got 2 questions for you. And I appreciate you being so gracious with your time. Number one, with all of the things that you just said, does that work in his favor? Because it almost sounds like it's hard for him to mount a defense, but it can work in the opposite direction as well. Like, a jury, how can we take this woman's word? I don't know that Bill Cosby was there. There's no forensics, there's no anything. So that's number one. And number two, he's 85 years old. And I purposely asked you, does this ever end for him? And you said, no, it doesn't. After his death, I mean, the man's legally blind. He has major health issues. I don't know how much longer he's going to be around. After his death, if he is not found guilty of these things, does it continue? Can people get money out of him? Or does it just all go away when he finally passes away?
Yeah, regarding your first question, if I understood it, you were asking, does the fact that so much time has passed, can that help him in a certain way? In a sense, because all of us are like, wait a minute now. You got violated when you were in 1975. Fine. You were 16, so maybe you were too young. Fine. But you turned 18 at some point. You turned 21 at some point. You turned 25 at some point. 30 years old at some point. You didn't bring any of these charges. You wait damn near 50 years to sue this man. There's going to be a part of us, a part of some of us that's going to look at that kind of side eye, kind of, that's sketchy, right? But again, we go to the value of a woman's word, and especially if she's white. Shout out to you talking about if she's got blonde hair, right? Playboy Mansion, blue eyes. I still don't know what a teenager's doing in the Playboy Mansion, but it was a different time back then. And she won the case. She won $500,000 from Cosby on that. So can it help Cosby? A little bit, I suppose, because we're all going to be a little suspicious, but it doesn't help enough to counterbalance the way he's being prejudiced, right? And listen, you just said, and you're exactly right, Cosby's an elderly man now. He's blind. Got millions and millions of dollars. The jury is going to think, fine, $500,000, you can afford it. But the problem with that is a jury gives her $500,000, and now you got all these women in Nevada now. You got all these women in California now. You got all these women in New York now. Why would it stop? Why would it stop? It's never going to stop. Now, when he passes away, there's really no one to sue. It's not like he can defend. It's not like they can sue his estate for these things because he's not going to be there to mount a defense, which is maybe another reason why so many women are starting to come out of the woodworks now, because someone could think he doesn't have long to live. Hopefully he lives a much longer life, but usually when we reach the age of 85, we don't have another 100 years. So sometimes you have to get while the getting is good. He has very deep pockets, and he's vulnerable, as all of these celebrities are who have money. If you have deep pockets, there's a line of lawyers looking at those pockets. And this woman who sued for $500,000, it's probably the case that she didn't pay her attorney 1 cent on the front end. The attorney just sat back and got a nice contingency fee. So the attorney ate, the woman ate. I mean, I'm not good at math, but if you were 16 in 1975, how old are you today? I mean, what are you just in the 70s, 80s? I don't want to do the math on the camera, but you're old as hell. And a lot of women are just going to start going forward because there's no disincentive. If you don't have to pay your attorney, If your attorney will say, hey, man, I'll do this case for free in the sense that you don't have to pay me anything, I'll just collect on the back end. If you're a 60-year-old woman, 70-year-old woman, what do I have to lose? You know, DeSantis down in Florida is trying to cut my alimony off. Let me get some new alimony from Bill, right? Let me go sue him and see what we got going on. So it's a tough situation for him, and I don't think it's ever going to stop with these states creating these new statute of limitation laws, which allows you to be sued for things that happened in the 70s, and you can be sued in court in 2023. Good luck defending yourself. I don't know how you're going to do it.
Well, you know, I asked you a question earlier, and I just want clarity because I'm not sure that you answered it directly. If he passes away before any of these new cases, these 9 additional women, and God knows how many other women are going to come out the woodwork before he finally leaves this earth, does it just stop, or can they sue his estate? You know, is his wife going to have to carry the burden of financially of people just never ever stop bringing cases against this man? How does it work?
Right, the case would be moot because he's passed away. You know, he has a right to defend himself. He has the right to make these women put up a good case and convince the judge or the jury, you know, by the preponderance of the evidence or whatever the standard is in whatever state that they're in. And if he's not there, then that's a violation of his due process rights because he's passed away. So, you know, we talked about it before in another segment where you really need to hear both sides. I forget what we were talking about, but if you, we were talking about Melly's case. And right now it's not looking good for Melly, right? But we have not heard Melly's defense. So maybe when Melly's defense team gets their chance to make their case, maybe the pendulum turns. You know, Melly has that right. In this case with Bill, if he's not around, then he's not going to have that right, and his estate would not have those due process rights either. So it would be unfair to have his estate pay money for things, for events that he is not admitted to, not agreed to, and he's not here to protect the assets of that estate.
Understood. Okay, we covered a whole hell of a lot, and thank you so much for your legal insight and perspective on so many of these high-profile cases. I learned a lot. I can assure you that, and I'm positive that so many people who are watching this and have watched it, you know, would have learned a lot from just your expertise in this area. So I thank you, and I look forward to the next time we can sit down and do it again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I enjoyed this conversation as well. I enjoyed this interview, and I'm ready, willing, and able to come back at any time.
Peace and love, my brother.
Yes.